At the time, George is on the floor, panting for his life, asking for forgiveness, calling for his mom, saying he can't breathe.
On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd died while a police officer knelt on his neck. The video of the incident led to protests in major cities across the USA. In Seattle, the protest led to one of the most bizarre incidents of the year, the creation of a separate state, known as Chaz. The year is 2020. Racial tensions are high, as many incidents of alleged police brutality are caught on video and make the news. Further complicating things, COVID-19 has spread worldwide, and the USA is currently in a state of national emergency. Most activities have been stopped, and only people deemed essential workers are allowed to go to work. In Michigan, the governor has signed an executive order on what people could buy at grocery stores. In California, the beaches have been closed. The Seattle Police Department had been under oversight by the Justice Department since 2012 after coming under scrutiny for allegations of excessive force.
Last month, the city and Department of Justice filed a joint motion asking the court to remove the parts of the decree they were in compliance with, including use of force, but not accountability or discipline. And then the protest happened. City Attorney Pete Holmes on Wednesday withdrew the city's motion.
On June 1st, an officer grabs an umbrella that is being used as part of a shield wall. There is a scuffle. The police use tear gas, flashbangs, and pepper spray. The protests continue, and just 6 days later things escalate again when a protester is shot. Nicholas Fernandez claimed it was in self-defense and that the protester had grabbed for the steering wheel. The protester said that the car was in danger of hitting people when Dan Gregory tried to grab the wheel. On June 8th, police abandoned the East Precinct in Seattle, and the protesters take over the building and the surrounding areas, and name it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or Chaz. Donald Trump called it a radical left takeover. Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin responded.
How long do you think Seattle in those few blocks looks like this?
I don't know. We could have the summer of love. Hey, Chris, the police will be policing in there. I want to be very clear on that.
The governor of Washington, Jay Inslee, was asked about the occupation, to which he had this to say.
Thing called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. What's your thought on that? The fact that the protesters have taken that over and not allowing people to come and go freely? Regarding the National Guard.
Well, that's news to me, so I'll have to reserve any comment about it. I have not heard anything about that from any credible source. Not that you're not credible. It's just like before I espouse an opinion, I should know of which I speak.
Chaz was the name for an occupation that took place around Cal Anderson Park in Seattle, Washington, and the Seattle Police Department East Precinct, which sits beside the park. The atmosphere inside varied wildly, from families walking around with children during the day beside the graffiti that said ACAB, to physical altercations and people walking around with assault rifles during the night. Open forums were set up, music was performed at night, and local businesses gave donations to the occupants, which were handed out at the No Cop Co-op. Tents were also set up in the park, and a garden was set up, including one specially for BIPOC, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Movie screenings took place. A mural was put up commemorating George Floyd and others who had allegedly been killed by the police. A long Black Lives Matter mural was painted on the street. People sat on the soccer field while waiting for the events to begin or just to pass the time. On June 8th, local members of the Black Lives Movement put together a list of demands. Some things they included in the demands were abolition of the Seattle Police Department and attached court system, a federal investigation into past and current cases of police brutality, decriminalization of all protesting and protection for all protesters in the George Floyd rebellion, an end to prosecutorial immunity for police officers, autonomy for people to create local anti-crime systems, the funding for the Seattle Police Department to be put into social use, de-gentrification of Seattle, restoring funding for the arts and culture, free college for people in Washington, employment of black doctors and nurses, the people of Seattle seek out and support black-owned businesses, mental health experts to respond to 911 calls pertaining to mental health, the history of Black and Native Americans to be given more focus, anti-bias training become mandatory for jobs in the education system, the state of Washington remove all monuments dedicated to the Confederacy. President Donald Trump begins tweeting about Chaz on June 10th. The governor of Washington, Jay Inslee, replies back. The mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, also tweeted in response. Fox News got in on the inanity by publishing a clearly doctored photo of a man holding an assault rifle while people appear to be looting a store. A new player enters the scene. Raz Simone. Raz is a local Seattle-based rapper who has some notoriety for his music, and during the occupation he began live streaming on Facebook from inside Chaz. Other people were filming as well, and they filmed Raz in a physical altercation at night where his group and himself began beating a man who was graffitiing a building. In another video, he is seen asking several civilians if they know how to use a gun.
Somebody over the age of 18 know how to use a gun? Take the clip out and put it back in.
No one's gonna like ask me walking in here with an ambulance.
Nah, just come right back.
Nah, Raz.
Keep the bell down.
Hey, keep that down.
Raz later confirmed it was him in an interview with Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is just for protection. We don't want anybody coming through with any kind of.
With their list of demands out there, now they had a different problem to focus on. Because the acronym Chaz has the word autonomous in it, it seemed they had seceded from the United States. But they were still dependent upon the people outside of Chaz to bring them food and collect garbage, and even calling the Seattle Fire Department when a dumpster caught on fire. On June 13th, the name was changed to CHOP, or Capitol Hill Organized Protest. But not everyone got the message. There were still a slew of different names being used by the protesters, including Chaz, Free Capitol Hill, Free Cap Hill, Cop Free Zone.
You could be saving his life. You could be saving his life right now.
We've not gotten cleared to do it.
You could be saving his life.
Say it over the radio.
Sir, please explain to me what's going on. He's
That's
dying.
Medic 44.
He needs your help. This is your job.
44.
Is this in your heart to do this?
I want to make sure that we have not been cleared to move into this.
You are clear. We're giving you the clear. We will make sure you're clear.
That's negative, Medic 44.
June 20th, after a celebration of Juneteenth at 2:19 a.m., shots are fired inside the occupied zone. Horace Lorenzo Anderson Jr. was shot multiple times and killed. He is the first to die of gunshot wounds in CHOP. Chief of Police Carmen Best claims that they couldn't get through the protesters.
The police have entered the zone. The weapons are out. The police had entered the zone, saying that they came to extract the victim, and so it very well could be the Seattle police mustered their forces outside of the zone until they had the appropriate manpower to come into the zone. I don't know, but now you got another situation because you got the police who are now not necessarily surrounded, but there's definitely there's a lot of people out here. This is the police are in the zone. The police are there, and when this hands up, it's for real now. I think they were unaware here that the victim had already been extracted from the site internally by the medics. Seattle police have entered into the site, and they're put your gun down. Hey! He got the spotlight over here. It's okay.
A local news station listens to the dispatched calls and claims it was a miscommunication that led to the long delay. In a separate incident right outside of CHOP, Dewan Young was shot in what he claims was a racially motivated crime. He says he heard the first shooting and decided to leave CHOP.
I'm not sure if they're Proud Boys or KKK, but the verbiage that they said was, hold this and shot me. They stood over top of me and continued to fire, and I tried to protect myself and got shot in the arm.
June 21st. A 17-year-old is shot in the arm, but refuses to speak with detectives. The police claimed a hostile crowd kept them from getting to the incident. June 23rd. Another person is shot. His injuries are not life-threatening. June 28th. A protest that featured a councilwoman, Kshama Sawant, and that began outside of CHOP moved to the mayor's house. This wasn't the first time Sawant had gotten involved in protesting. She had been part of a protest that occupied City Hall on June 10th.
You about to lose your job. 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 You about to lose your job.
June 29th. At 3 a.m. in the morning, another person is shot to death and a 14-year-old boy is injured. Both are brought to the hospital by volunteer paramedics. On July 1st, Mayor Jenny Durkin gives the order to have CHOP dismantled. Police then clear the area, arresting 44 people who refused to leave, and the short and confusing reign of CHOP has ended.
For weeks, we had peaceful demonstrations on Capitol Hill. While thousands have peacefully protested in the area over the last weeks, the public safety threats in recent weeks have been well documented. The multiple acts of gun violence have resulted in tragic deaths of 2 individuals, both of them teenagers. Multiple others were seriously wounded. For weeks, I have been consulting with city departments and particularly with Chief Best and Chief Scoggins on the best ways to reduce the number of people in the area, provide services to homeless individuals, reduce impacts to neighborhoods, and increase public safety. Despite our continued efforts to de-escalate and bring community messengers in, including personally having conversations with demonstrator organizations on Friday, the deteriorating conditions and repeated gun violence required us to immediately address public safety concerns. From conversations over the weekend, it was clear that many individuals would not leave, and that the impacts to the community could not be reduced, and public safety could not be improved until they did leave. An operation of this scope and magnitude takes significant resources and planning, particularly by the Seattle Police Department. Over the last 2 weeks, city departments and SPD, under Chief Best's leadership, have been devising a range of operational plans. I am very grateful for Chief Best's leadership and for SPD's work. For days, they have had to design and practice the operation that began this morning. So late last night, after consulting with Chief Best and my other departments, I issued an executive order asking city departments to work together to address public health and public safety concerns, as well as the sustained damage to Cal Anderson Park and the East Precinct area. I'm hoping to meet with the families of the gun victims so I can directly express my condolences for the loved ones they lost in those senseless acts of violence. I know they too have been on Capitol Hill. These acts of violence hurt our whole community, and they are also in direct contrast to the message ringing from the streets that Black Lives Matter.
In November of 2020, Seattle voted to decrease the police department budget by 17%. They decreased it by another $8 million in 2021. In December of 2020, Councilwoman Lisa Herbold calls 911 after a rock is thrown through her window. Herbold was a staunch supporter of defunding the police. In October 23 of 2022, Kashama Sawant, the councilwoman who had led the protest in City Hall and at the mayor's house, sent a letter to the city council, police chief, and mayor about the police failing to investigate a series of disturbing incidents. According to her, human excrement had been thrown into her yard on 6 different occasions. At this time, there has been no arrest made. On June 24th, while CHOP was still being occupied, business owners in the area filed a suit against the city of Seattle for being complicit and letting the occupiers keep the area blocked off. The case was denied class action status, but it is still ongoing. It has been found that Mayor Durkin, Police Chief Best, and Fire Chief Scroggins have deleted text messages relating to the incident, though whether this was done purposefully is yet to be determined. Now remember on June 8th, when the police abandoned the East Precinct and that allowed the protesters to set up what was then known as Chaz? There has been a lot of confusion over what had actually happened. It was reported that Assistant Chief Tom Mahaffey had ordered the evacuation of the precinct without informing his superior, Police Chief Carmen Best, who was absent from the meeting. Mayor Durkin was also absent from the same meeting. Best blamed leaving the East Precinct on the city government, then on Mahaffey. Because of the lawsuit against the city, these text messages came out. It turns out Best did have knowledge about the plan to remove firearms, ammunition, and evidence from the building, and she discussed it through text with Mayor Durkin. Though whether either of them understood all the officers would be leaving as well is open to interpretation. Carmen Best put in her resignation just hours after the city council voted to cut spending for the police department. She left on September 2nd. Raz Simone has gone on to do multiple interviews, including one with CNN. He hasn't released an album since 2019. He is now being taken to civil court for allegations of sexual and physical abuse and sex trafficking. He is denied all claims and has no current criminal charges. Oh, and one other thing. Raz Simone had been in contact with officials at City Hall while the occupation was taking place. Text messages were found of him communicating with Seattle Fire Department Chief Harold Scoggins, the officer Derek Chauvin, who put his knee on the neck of George Floyd, was convicted in June of 2021 of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter.